You are listening to the Air Raid Hour with host Judge Mathis, dog, Tilt Money, dog, presented by the fine folks over at the Cover One Sports Network, dogs. Bills Mafia, let's go!
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour Cover One pregame show. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Together, we are the Bills guys. This show is presented by Picasso's Pizza and the Cover One Podcast Network. Inactive List is out. We're going to get to that momentarily, but Dave, here we go again. Temperatures 57 degrees and raining. It's expected to rain between 1 and 4 p.m. today. So for the duration of the football game at M&T Bank Stadium, the remnants of Hurricane Ian, what are your thoughts on the type of football that we're going to see played out there today?
Well, I would say just off the bat that the conditions, at least on the surface, don't seem to favor the Bills in this situation, given the high-flying passing attack the Bills usually deploy and are not really known for running the ball. But the Ravens passing attack has been pretty good here as well. But we know Lamar Jackson and that Ravens running game is really good. They've got J.K. Dobbins back kind of in the mix. So I think what this really signifies to me is that in this bad weather game, a lot is going to fall on the shoulders of the two quarterbacks, and not just because they're, two MVP candidates, but because I think you're going to see a lot of running out of both of these quarterbacks today, given the conditions. So it'll be for your people who have, are worried about from a fantasy perspective for Lamar and Josh. I wouldn't worry about that. They'll probably be running the ball a ton as well on top of throwing it. So.
Yeah, there are some people who are on the ground in Baltimore telling me it's mostly just a light drizzle and it's expected to stay that way. So we've seen Josh Allen play in some really bad conditions and light up the scoreboard in some really bad conditions. So a light drizzle today in Baltimore shouldn't be that bad as long as it doesn't get torrential. That's the issue. But it appears, at least I'm not a meteorologist, but it appears from fans on the ground and reading reports that it won't get to that point today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we kick into the pregame show here, we are presented by Picasso's Pizza. They're the flagship sponsor of this show. 4 great locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Buffalo Pizza since 1980. Hand-cut cup and char pepperonis. You can't beat it. I miss it out here on the West Coast. I mean, just look at that image. That is some good-looking pizza right there. You can order online at picassospizza.net. And if you're not a towner like me and Dave, you can get it mailed to your home. And I can tell you from experience, it's just as good as getting it fresh from the restaurant. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right, let's get right into the inactive list, because that's typically what people want to hear broken down. And it's pretty much dropped about 4 minutes before we came on air here. Not a lot unexpected from what I saw on Friday's injury report, and then what I gathered once Prince Emili was called up from the practice squad. The Buffalo Bills will be without Jake Kumaro today, Jordan Phillips today, Ed Oliver today, Christian Benford today. Justin Murray, the new guy they signed, is a little banged up, and he probably wasn't ready to play even if he was fully healthy. And Tommy Sweeney is a healthy inactive and he has been since the return of Quentin Morris. I might as well, point that out while we're here. For the Ravens, they're missing 2 of their big offensive linemen in Patrick McCarry and Ronnie Staley. Justin Houston, their edge rusher, is out. And then Jalen Armour-Davis and Kenyon Drake round out their inactive list. To me, McCarry and Staley are the 2 big ones for the Baltimore Ravens. Let's start with that. What are your thoughts on the Ravens inactive list?
Yeah, it seemed like there were some rumblings that maybe Ronnie Staley might be active this week. That's not the case. Obviously, that's a huge boost for the Bills, given that, we're trying to pick apart where the Bills might have advantages in this game. And you would like to think that pass rush now with Ronnie Staley not playing is going to be an advantage for the Bills, knowing that, hey, we're short Ed Oliver on the interior, we're short Jordan Phillips on the interior, but we still got those edge guys, Von Miller and Gregory Rousseau. So that's an advantage for the Bills. Obviously, Lamar Jackson can get out of trouble with his legs, but you would certainly prefer it if you're the Bills to not have to
Mhm.
deal with Ronnie Staley. And so I think to me, that's the biggest one here. And again, like negative plays in this game could end up being the difference. So the fact that the Bills are going to be able to get after Lamar Jackson without Ronnie Staley protecting him, gives them at least some hope to contain him and maybe, actually create some negative plays and sack him a few times.
Yeah, and unless Sharp, the guy they call off the practice squad, is playing, it looks like it's going to be Daniel Falele at left tackle, Morgan Moses at right tackle, because Makari was the backup left tackle, and he is out as well. So that is a huge ding for the Baltimore Ravens. And we talked a ton about Daniel Falele in the pre-draft process. Bills fans and big boys, they love them. But one of the things that Daniel Falele did is his stock kind of dropped at the Senior Bowl because bendy edge rushers were blazing by him. There was talk, hey, can Daniel Falele play right guard even with his height, because he had trouble with some of the speed off of the edge. So it'll be super interesting to see. I'm sure a team like the Baltimore Ravens are going to have a plan and a way to sort of counter having Daniel Falele playing at left tackle. But at the end of the day, it is still Von Miller versus Daniel Falele, a rookie who struggles with speed off the edge. So that is definitely something to look out for in this game. In the comment section, EEASSA, I'm not even going to, Issa is saying that Dane Jackson's going to play. Yes, Dane Jackson is active. And here's the thing. Jamarcus Ingram wasn't called up from the practice squad. The Bills are rolling only 8 guys at DB. They did so last week as well. I'm still a little surprised, but also not, because it is the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens very rarely run 11 personnel. You're not going to see any more than 2 wide receivers out on the football field for the most part for the Baltimore Ravens. So it's, I guess, okay for the Bills to be a little bit lighter in the secondary. A guy like Saran Neal, who typically doesn't play on defense, might actually play a little bit on defense this week, especially given his size and stature. But what are your thoughts on Dane Jackson playing, Ed Oliver and Jordan Phillips being out against this Baltimore Ravens team? Like, where's your concern and where's your head at with the Bills inactive list?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the corner situation, we're only rolling 5 guys. It's not that surprising, I guess, for the reasons you mentioned. And as good as Lamar Jackson's been, he's still only 17th in the league in passing yards. Their guys, we're going to talk about a little bit, have really lived and died from the big play. So I don't think necessarily volume of guys at the corner position is necessarily like a big factor because of the formations the Baltimore Ravens typically run. But to me, Ed Oliver and George Phillips being out is probably the bigger story, given that, like I mentioned in the open, they've got J.K. Dobbins back. Justice Hill looked pretty good last week on his touches. Lamar running the ball. So that's something that you always have to be sort of going after first if you're playing the Baltimore Ravens, right? Is slowing down the run game and take your chances in the passing game. And so I'm not super concerned that the Bills are only going 5 deep at corner today, including the nickel guys. But it is nice to see Dane back out there and sort of, a quicker recovery probably than many maybe would have assumed, given how bad that injury looked on that Titans game. But good for him. Practiced all week, and it'll be nice to have him back in there, right? Stabilize that group. And to be perfectly honest, like, we were so worried about him not being in there last week. We didn't necessarily miss him, but we did kind of realize how stabilizing he is to that group. So it is really nice to have him back.
Yeah, we got Steve R coming in saying, is Poyer 100%? Obviously, probably not, coming off that sprained foot. It'll be interesting to see where he's at. And speaking of where guys are at, Gabe Davis is active. Gabe Davis missed that. He's had ankle injuries before. And when he's had ankle injuries in the past, he hasn't been very effective on the football field. He really has only been mostly a decoy in years previous. He missed the Titans game. He played in the Dolphins game and honestly didn't look very effective while playing on that bum ankle injury that he has. He probably played more snaps than the Bills expected because of the Jake Kumaro injury during the game. I'm honestly surprised he's playing this week, especially after the video where we saw him tweak the ankle injury on Wednesday. I get a lot of people on social media every time I post something where I disagree with the Buffalo Bills. And the comment is typically, you think you know more than the team? No, I obviously don't think I know more than the team, but I am a fan of the team and I am allowed to have an opinion. And my opinion is I don't think Gabriel Davis should be playing in this football game. I'm really concerned that he's not going to be anything more than a decoy for the Buffalo Bills. I think I would have rather seen Isaiah Hodgins called up and him and Shakir split time at the Z wide receiver position. What are your thoughts as Pops Mafia comes in agreement with me that that he thinks that Hodgins would have been a better than a maybe 60% Gabriel Davis?
Well, especially given, it is going to be raining a little bit and the conditions aren't necessarily going to be ideal for cutting and things like that. So, it's a bit of a surprise, but I just don't know that when push comes to shove, if the Bills feel like, where does this final decision lie, right? It obviously lies with Sean McDermott and that assessment. And like the Bills are typically pretty conservative when it comes to injuries like that, right? And so it is interesting to see that Gabe Davis is being handled slightly differently than you would have expected how they've handled injuries in the past, because the Bills in the past have tended to lean on the side of caution when it comes to things like this. So it is a little bit surprising. If he is a decoy, that's fine. But in reality, you'd still rather him just get better and get back to 100%. So I guess with him being up, let's see how much he actually plays today in a game where there's quote normal heat, I guess, if you want to phrase it that way, where he doesn't have to come in because of injuries. And we'll see how many snaps he actually does play, because it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to see a bunch of Isaiah McKenzie, Jamison Crowder, and Khalil Shakir getting snaps outside of Stephon Diggs in this game.
And the thing is I think Gabriel Davis is just so important to what the Buffalo Bills do running the ball. So like BFL Mafia News comes in and says, they're doing that approach with Ed, but not Gabe. I would agree with that, but I also think it's probably easier to mask the loss of Ed Oliver than it might be to mask the loss of Gabriel Davis, just because of how important Gabriel Davis is to the run game. And now his true backup, Jake Kumaro, who also has a bigger body and is good doing some of that dirty work like in the run game, is also out for a decent amount of time against obviously the Ravens, and then the next couple of weeks with his high ankle sprain. But Khalil Shakir will be interesting to see if he gets run. But between Shakir and, you saw him struggling with the run blocking in the game. He did get a chance to play against the Titans. I think he whiffed on a block and then he got pulled and really never went back into the game for the most part. And then you saw, Jamison Crowder and Isaiah McKenzie just don't really have the stature. I think that might be the reason why Gabriel Davis is playing today, is mostly just because of what he supplies sort of run blocking and what the Bills want to do in that aspect of the offense. Someone asked, is Ed Oliver out? And yes, Ed Oliver is out today. Prince Emili will be DT number 4 behind Brandon Bryant, Tim Settle, and Daquan Jones. Let's start not with the Buffalo Bills offense here, but let's start with the Buffalo Bills defense versus the Baltimore Ravens offense. Looking at the Ravens offense, obviously it's quarterbacked by one of the best quarterbacks in the league, leading the league in touchdowns right now with 12, 10 passing, 2 rushing. That is Lamar Jackson. Running backs, they got J.K. Dobbins and Justice Hill seem to be the two who are going to be splitting the carries. Justice Hill had 48% of the snap share last week. J.K. Dobbins had 43% of the snap share last week. That could go up as he gets healthier coming off of that ACL tear from last year. Patrick Ricard, 65% of the snaps, their fullback Ricard played last week. Bateman, 62% of the snaps at wide receiver. Duvernay, 58%. Just goes to show you that the Ravens do not use a lot of receivers. Their third and fourth receivers, Demarcus Robinson, Tylan Wallace. Robinson, 37% of the snaps. Wallace only played 6 snaps the entire game. Didn't even put a percentage next to his name. And then they have a lot of tight ends that they like to utilize. Mark Andrews, 90% of the snap share last week. Josh Oliver coming back, playing his first game of the year. 40% of the snap share last week. Isaiah Likely, the rookie, 33% of the snap share last week. And then only 4 snaps for Nick Boyle, who's known as a run blocker, so sort of a quasi fullback, tight end, offensive lineman, just a Lee Smith type of dude. But he was coming off of an injury, and his snap share might even increase this week. So looking at that Ravens offense and looking at their personnel usage, excluding garbage time, the Ravens used 21 personnel 31% of the time, second most in the NFL. They used 22 personnel 26% of the time, most in the NFL. I told you, Rashard plays 65% of their snaps. 12 personnel, 25% of the time, which is ninth most in the NFL. 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, 11% of the time, last in the National Football League. The Ravens are going to load up on tight ends and fullbacks and running backs. That is their game plan every week, regardless of opponent. On defense, we have a very good nickel corner in Teron Johnson. He's a starter, and our base is nickel. But how do we respond to these heavy packages that we're going to see from the Baltimore Ravens?
Well, I think the Bills are going to start in, I think, their normal defense and kind of see how it goes, right? Teron Johnson has been flying all over the field lately, and you saw it in the Miami game. He did bring a stabilizing presence to the defense. He was in on a couple, tackles in the backfield and was really a sure tackler for the entirety of the game. So I do think the Bills want to probably play their normal sort of nickel defense and kind of see how it goes, but wouldn't be surprising if we did see a little bit of mixing in of, Terrell Bernard in some situations and bringing in a little bit of a heavier personnel, Tyrell Dodson, amongst others. But I do think it's hard to ignore Taron Johnson's tackling so far this year. So is he going to be undersized probably against the personnel of the Ravens? Yes, but I do think the Bills feel like he's probably still their best chance to slowing them down, because in situations where they don't end up running the ball, he's going to be the guy that's going to have to chase down guys like Mark Andrews and make these tackles. So I still think the Bills probably trust Johnson more than anyone else. And I do think they will start out in their normal defense and kind of see if they can get away with it in a sense. And maybe it's more of a, maybe we see a bit more of a rotation on the defensive front, which your depth's going to be tested there, but the Bills are already known to do that. So it is going to be very interesting to see if the Bills shift that up and take him off the field at all, knowing how good he's been already this year.
Yeah, Charles B comes in all caps, so I'm going to respond. He says, is Poyer playing? Yes, Jordan Poyer is active. Jessica Tennis comes in and says, maybe Saran Neal, and that's where my thinking sort of goes. It's tough to take Teron Johnson off the field, but I think you could see both Terrell Bernard and Saran Neal mixed in this game. What am I trying to say here? Even though Ed Oliver and Jordan Phillips are still are out, I still think our defensive tackle rotation of Daquan Jones, Tim Settle, Brandon Bryant, and Prince Emili, oddly enough, I still think those 4 are better than the 4 that we rolled out last year. And I think they will be stouter up front and able to control the line of scrimmage better than the group did last year against teams like, say, the Colts come to mind, where using nickel defense really burned the Buffalo Bills. So I think to your point, I think the Bills will, be mostly in nickel. That is their base defense. But I wouldn't be shocked to see packages where Terrell Bernard comes on the field. I refuse to believe we drafted a backup in the 3rd round, a backup to Matt Milano in the 3rd round. So, Terrell Bernard's the kind of guy who can give you pass rush. He can drop back into coverage. He's a bigger body up at the line of scrimmage than the Teron Johnson. So I like to think that maybe there could be some packages for Terrell Bernard. And I also think Saran Neal, he was promised a bigger role, or he said he was promised a bigger role on defense when he signed that extension with the Buffalo Bills. And he's yet to really see the field on defense for the Buffalo Bills. So either the Bills lied to him, or maybe there are certain games where they promised him some packages on defense, games against teams like Baltimore, Indianapolis, the New England Patriots, etc. So maybe we see some Saran Neal out here versus a team that likes to run the football out of heavy packages, because the clapback to that could be, well, wouldn't we have seen him versus Derrick Henry and the Titans? The Titans like to run out of 11. They like to spread you out. That's not what the Baltimore Ravens do. They like to bunch you up. So it should be interesting to see if there's a package for these guys. Again, looking at the Ravens offense, J.K. Dobbins coming off of an injury. He's been unimpressive so far. Justice Hill outran him last week. Mike Davis only got 1 carry. Kenyon Drake is inactive. The only real running threat on the Baltimore Ravens right now, quite frankly, is Lamar Jackson. You don't contain Lamar Jackson, but how do you slow down Lamar Jackson? What do the Bills got to do this game?
Well, ultimately, it stops with, I think, you got to take Mark Andrews out of the game and kind of force Lamar Jackson elsewhere. If you're talking about from a passing standpoint, you look at the Ravens so far this year, Mark Andrews has 22 receptions. That is more combined or total same combined as the next 4 guys on the team. You have Duvernay with 8, Bateman with 8, likely with 5, and Robinson with 3. So you don't even have another guy with double-digit receptions outside of Mark Andrews, who has 22. So objective one, as far as stopping Lamar in the passing game, is trying to contain Mark Andrews. It's obviously easier said than done, but the Bills have been better against tight ends this year and really towards the end of last year than they had been in the past. So that's objective one. And then objective two is you have to funnel Lamar Jackson sort of either to the sideline or back into the teeth of the defense. You cannot let him get like a free lane in some of those cutbacks. And when you get to Lamar Jackson, when you get your hands on him, you have to be able to take him down. He's so slippery. Eric was showing that play this week, the film play where he got out of that pass rush from I believe it was the Jets, and he just like made something happen out of nothing. And it's like those are the things that are going to drive you crazy if you're a Bills fan, is getting your hands on a guy like Lamar Jackson and not being able to bring him down. Fortunately, I think the Bills do have the right guys now, like those edge guys, Miller and Rousseau, and like to the extent we see sort of Basham and Epinesa sort of cycled in there. I like the Bills' chances of being able to get him down when they get their hands on him. I'm not saying it's going to happen every time, but I like their chances more so than I have in the past of being able to do that. And then if he does run, you got to try to force him towards the sidelines. When he gets going and he gets up the middle and there's just that open space in front of him, it's bad news for you as a defense. So force him, if he's going to run, force him towards the sidelines. And then obviously in the passing game, you got to try to limit Mark Andrews as much as you can. Just knowing how much they've relied on him this year.
Yeah, some really good comments coming in from the comment section. Renee Williams, I didn't even hear this. She said that coach said that they didn't use Saran Neal last week because of the heat, wanted him on special teams, so maybe he gets out there today. And then Justin comes in with, I think, a really good, timely comment here. He says, good thing we have Groot and Vaughn, 2 pass rushers who are elite at setting the edge, so that should be helpful for the Bills and attempting to slow down. I hate to use the word contain because I don't think you can contain Lamar Jackson, but slow down. Lamar's going to get his, but as long as you can slow him down, you should be good. My next question to you is going to be the 3 main weapons in this Baltimore Ravens offense are Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay. Yep. Bateman and Duvernay are off to hot starts, but not on a lot of targets. I think that was a really good statistic you pointed out, that Mark Andrews completions are pretty much the same as all the next 4 guys combined. Yep. My next question was going to be, who scares you the most? So I think I understand who scares you the most, but Bateman and Duvernay are pretty good down the football field. Yes. How do the Buffalo Bills, with all this play action stuff the Ravens like to do, they really, again, this is where you miss Micah Hyde. They really got to stay patient and they can't bite too much. Jordan Poyer back helps. Who do you think you see at free safety? Do you think we see Jaquan Johnson, or do you think we see DeMar Hamlin this week?
That's a great question. I think Johnson maybe to start, but I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't a permanent thing. Look, we talked about Hill and Waddle a lot last week and their ability to get downfield, and we were kind of stressing out about the Bills being short in the secondary. But part of that equalizing factor was like Tua's arm strength and Tua's ability to push the ball down the field. We weren't necessarily super confident in. Lamar Jackson, for as much criticism he's received over the years about his passing, whatever, he is a good deep ball. Like he does have an arm to get the ball down the field, and that's obviously been evident so far through these 2 games. Devin Duvernay averaging 15.1 yards per catch. Rashad Bateman averaging 28.3 yards per catch. Now, that's not sustainable, but these guys are big play threats. So even with low volume, it really only takes 1 or 2 plays to make a big difference. And in a game where maybe we're overplaying the weather, maybe it's not going to be as big of a factor, but like 1 or 2 big plays down the field, that could be deflating for a defense. We saw it last week. The Dolphins made 1 big play down the field to Jalen Waddle, and it was a huge play in the game. So the Bills really got to be ready to kind of defend against that big play. And it's not going to be like Rashad Bateman's catching 10 balls in this game. Like, he's going to be going deep, and they're going to be trying to take some shots deep with him in situations where they're not just peppering Mark Andrews with targets. So the Bills have to be ready for that. I'd expect to see Johnson out there first. I do like that we have Dane back, obviously, and Poyer being back to kind of stabilize the back end, even though he's not the center fielder. From a communication standpoint, I think is going to be huge in helping on that regard as well. So the Bills need to be ready for that. And then the other thing I would say in regards to this passing game for the Ravens, and I put this on Twitter earlier this week, Lamar Jackson 17th in the NFL in passing yards, but first in the NFL in passing yards when they use pre-snap motion on passing plays. So the Ravens are, even if they're going to bunch up a bit, they are still going to motion guys around and try to kind of confuse the Bills defense. And so they need to be ready for that as well. Didn't see it so much with the Dolphins, but I would expect to see a lot of motion, pre-snap motion for the Ravens. They've been very good and successful passing the ball when using motion.
And that's something that's one of the reasons why you probably want Teron Johnson on the field. Like we were having this conversation with Aaron Quinn in the Cover One group chat this morning. Teron Johnson's one of the best communicators on this defense, relaying messages to the linebackers, communicating with the safeties in the other corner. So that's another reason why you would want Teron Johnson out there on the football field, even though the personnel might make you, think that you need, a linebacker or a Saran Neal sized type of player. All right, let's transition now to the Buffalo Bills offense versus the Baltimore Ravens defense. The Ravens defense, a lot of big names, but obviously there has been some, some struggles, some inconsistencies. Look at that second half against the Miami Dolphins and all the passing yards that they gave up, allowing the Dolphins to come back in that football game. But they're pretty stout up front. Calais Campbell, Travis Jones, Justin Matabuke will be starting. Michael Pierce went on IR, I believe, after an injury last week. So the rookie Travis Jones, a guy that we really liked, is now stepping into that position. Along the edge, FAOA, 86% snap share last week. He's really good. It was down to him and Gregory Rousseau in the minds of Bills Mafia, really, for that last pick, or that second to last pick in the draft a couple of years ago. Brandon Copeland signed a couple of weeks ago, had a 39% snap share. That's going to go up with Justin Houston out, and Jason Pierre-Paul is making his debut for the Ravens today. Linebackers, they used a lot of linebackers last week, but that was the Patriots. Patrick Queen is leading the way for them. They have Josh Bynes, and they also have Malik Harrison. In the secondaries, there's some names here. Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters, they lead the way. They're going to be playing most of the game. Marcus Williams, Chuck Clark at safety. They're going to play most, if not the entire game. But then their depth is kind of shaky. Brandon Stevens, 35% snap share last week. Demarion Williams, 30% snap share, splitting time in the nickel. And then Kyle Hamilton has essentially been benched for some of the struggles that he's had early the first rounder, 16% snap share last week. 57 degrees, raining. Does that change the game plan radically against this Baltimore Ravens defense?
Not radically, no. I think that maybe you see some more Josh Allen running, but I don't think it should be a radical change. I mean, we talked about this a couple times last year when there were some bad weather games early in the season that the Bills had. I think against the Texans, it wasn't like a great weather game, and they came out and kind of just did their thing. So no, I don't think it's necessarily going to change the game plan, but you do have to be aware about some of those names. Obviously, Marcus Williams has 3 interceptions already on the year, so you got to be, careful about that. But it doesn't necessarily give you pause, because we've obviously seen Stephon Diggs kind of perform in difficult situations already this year. So I don't think it necessarily changes the game plan significantly. I do think maybe you see a little bit more Josh Allen running the ball today, but look, the Bills couldn't run the ball for crap last week. So, I mean, any improvement over what they did last week from a running game perspective is going to be welcome. But from the passing game, as long as the rain isn't too bad, I don't think it should affect the Bills that much from the passing game.
Yeah, Brandon P coming in. Always appreciate you, Brandon. He says, checking in from the game. Lots of blue and red jerseys here. Smash that like and go Bills. Yeah, I love to see it on social media. A lot of Buffalo fans taking over Baltimore. I mean, a little quieter than usual, maybe not as big as usual, but I did see some restaurants taking over last night. So thank you for Brendan for representing Bills Mafia out there in Baltimore. Maybe give us a weather report check-in, because I'm going to answer this question here in a second. But Alan Collins also coming in with a super chat. I always appreciate. He says, does this feel like a Reggie Gilliam heavy game? I would think so. I think you're going to see a lot of Reggie Gilliam and a lot of utilization of that 21 personnel. Now, it's not going to be traditional, like he's not going to be lined up in the I formation, but I think that you will see guys like Reggie Gilliam utilized to maybe spark this running game this week. And that sort of, gets to my point here with the weather. like I said, and Brendan, maybe you can correct us if you're still watching. I know you said you were just sort of checking in because you're there, so enjoy the tailgate. But if you're there, the people who are there have been texting me. People say it's a light drizzle. It's supposed to be a light drizzle for most of the game. It shouldn't affect the game plan too much, but it is windy. There is some wind out there, like 15, 20 mile an hour winds. And to me, that makes me hope that the Buffalo Bills are aggressive on fourth down. I do not want this to be a game where the Buffalo Bills are counting on field goals.
Yep.
You know what Josh Allen's going to want to do on some of these fourth and short situations past midfield. And thus far, Sean McDermott has obliged him for the most part. So I'd like to see the Buffalo Bills be really aggressive on fourth down. Like if it's a 3rd and 8, you don't need to try to get all 8 inside the 50-yard line. Maybe just try to get 5 or 6 to set up a 4th and short. What are your thoughts on just being really aggressive and not relying on field goals in a game like today?
I mean, I think you should do that anyway, to be honest, against the Ravens, because the Ravens offense has been so good this year. I think you need to score as many points as possible and be aggressive. You need to be, playing to win is how they would phrase it. Right. And regardless of the wind, I think, what the Ravens offense is capable of given their performances so far this year, the big comeback against Miami, the tons of points they scored against the Patriots. And I would do that anyway, regardless of the win. So I hope that's a situation where the Bills don't. It gets back to that topic we discussed last week about the Bills struggling in these short yardage situations. Can they get over this hurdle of being able to, say mentally, right? Like we're going to convert this short yardage situation. We're going to go for it. We're going to get it, right? We're going to use Josh Allen or whatever, and we're going to get it. Like I think. Obviously, execution and play calling is a huge factor on short yardage, but there is an element of confidence here, I think, as well, that needs to be sort of taken, right? The Bills need to take those situations and make it theirs and have the confidence to do it, and they need to do it today either way. So I say yes, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, Pops Mafia comes in and says, I hope that Brown has a better game at tackle. Yes, I all think we do. If someone were to ask me, like, hey, what is one shocking thing you could see to start this football game? Mine would probably be David Questenberry starting the game at right tackle. I doubt it happens, but if someone put a gun to my head and said, pick something, that might be what I'm picking. What would I pick given his struggles last week against the Miami Dolphins? But we need to improve our line play, speaking of Spencer Brown, and just controlling the line of scrimmage, and we need to improve in these short yardage situations. We don't need to run more, but we certainly need to run more effectively. And this is the week where we have to figure it out along the offensive line. Spencer Brown missed a ton of time in training camp. Roger Saffold missed a ton of time in training camp. Other guys missed time over the course of training camp as well. I think Ryan Bates was out. It's all a blur to me. But a lot of guys missed significant amount of time, and they haven't really had a chance to gel. This is the week where it needs to all come together against the Baltimore Ravens. Like I said, we need to really improve that line play, control the line of scrimmage, and improve those short yardage situations. Do you agree with me here that we really can't, I think, beat the Baltimore Ravens if we're controlling the line of scrimmage the way we controlled it against the Baltimore Ravens or against the Miami Dolphins?
100% agree. 100% agree. I think that's going to set the tone for this game. Whatever lines are playing better is going to just instill confidence to the rest of the team outwardly. And so the Bills have to get better in these short yardage situations. I think having Mitch Morse back, obviously, this week is going to stabilize it. I think I saw a couple comments in the comment section mentioning that. That's obviously a big boost to the Bills. It looks like they're going to have their sort of expected starting 5 out there, which is great. For request for run blocking. That's pretty funny. That's good. But yeah, Spencer Brown needs to have a better day. I do think like the fact that it will be sort of normal temperature conditions will help as well. But Mitch Morse, just his presence back is going to stabilize things a bit, but that doesn't guarantee success, right? Like you still have to go out and execute, and you still have to go out and sort of exert your will on this Ravens front. That is pretty solid. They are missing a couple guys. You mentioned Justin Houston being out, etc. But, up front, they're still pretty stout. So it's going to be a test for the Bills. They did not run the ball well against Miami. I know it was an interesting situation there. And really until the end of that Titans game, they didn't run the ball that great either. So I know they've played against some tough defensive lines to start the year. Aaron Donald week 1, just Jeffrey Simmons week 2. And then Miami with their, they were missing Roquan Davis, but they still had Christian Wilkins in there last week. So early test for the Bills as far as going up against tough interiors. So another test today for them. And it's a big day for this offensive line because they didn't really play that great last week.
Deion Dawkins had some surprising comments this week, and I guess they shouldn't have been, that surprising, because I remember we had this conversation with Eric like earlier in the season when we were talking about Lamar Jackson, and he was just like, listen, Baltimore is a running football team, so they spend a majority of their practice working on their run sets and their run packages and their run personnel. So it's hard to develop Lamar Jackson as a quarterback, a passing quarterback, when that's the focus of your practices. And Deion Dawkins made a similar comment this week where he said, I'm not really surprised that we're not running the ball well, because most of our focus in practice is on our passing sets. We're a passing football team. That's the focus of our practice. I feel like maybe that might have had to change a little bit this week, or a little bit of focus needs to be shifting to running the ball more effectively. We saw maybe the light go on for the Buffalo Bills late last season, where they made some adjustments to the running game, got the running game going, and the Buffalo Bills were a much more successful football team heading into the playoffs. I think that light needs to come on a little bit earlier in the season. Listen, I'm all for Josh Allen throwing the ball 50 times a game. 60's pushing it. So let's make sure that we don't need to run the ball more. We need to run the ball more effectively, so we have the threat of a run game. It allows our passing game to do more things. So I think hopefully the Buffalo Bills made running the football just a little bit more of a focus at practice this week. We already talked about Gabriel Davis, but Gabriel Davis and Dawson Knox banged up. How effective do you think these guys can be this week against the Baltimore Ravens? Do we see Gabriel Davis or Dawson Knox? Do we see either of these guys pop off? Like, do we see either of them have a big game, or is it going to be sort of these smaller games that we've been seeing from them dealing with these injuries?
Well, I will say, based on sort of the Ravens defense, and I think they're just 18th in DVOA. Obviously, we saw what they allowed to Miami a couple of weeks ago. They even allowed a ton of yardage and big passing plays to New England last week. It certainly sets up for Gabriel Davis to have a big day, right? I mean, it's going to all depend on the stability of that injury, that ankle. But Dawson Knox, too, I think people have been kind of waiting for that breakout game for him this year. This very well could be it. Again, if the Bills do start struggling a bit on the offensive line and Josh is having to get the ball out quickly, you could see the middle of the field open a little bit for Dawson Knox. I think that either one of them, it wouldn't surprise me if either one of them had a big day today, even with the injuries. But I would say from a matchup perspective and a health perspective, I would imagine Dawson Knox is probably a little bit healthier than Gabriel Davis going into this game. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't necessarily have a ton of volume. I'm not expecting him to have 7-8 catches necessarily, but if he had 2 touchdowns in this game, it would not surprise me at all. Dawson Knox, that is. So matchup wise, I think Gabe Davis has a great matchup, but the question is that the health of that ankle. So the conditions are there for him. It's just a matter of that ankle.
Thomas Burke is between a rock and a hard place here. Gabriel Davis or Treylon Burks versus Tennessee. In my very unprofessional opinion, I would still probably roll with Gabriel Davis just because they're not well there in Tennessee, even though they did get that dub last week. The Ravens are coming off a big week on defense last week against the New England Patriots. Obviously, they haven't been super consistent. You look at the second half of that Dolphins game, but last week their defense accumulated 3 sacks, 3 interceptions, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. Marlon Humphrey had a red zone interception. Marcus Peters had an interception, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. Josh Bynes, the linebacker, chipped in an INT. And then Brandon Copeland in his first game had a sack. Patrick Queen had a sack. And Justin Metabuke had a sack. There are some impressive names on this defense. They historically are a very good defense. They have been a little bit inconsistent this year. How do you think the Baltimore Ravens come out and just defend what the Buffalo Bills do? We had this conversation about how the Buffalo Bills try to slow down, not limit or not contain, but slow down Lamar. How do the Ravens try to slow down Josh Allen?
I think you got to take a page out of what Miami did, right? A little bit. It's going to start up front for the Ravens. You mentioned some of the names. I think that, look, Josh Allen has been really good against the blitz in his career, but And even really statistically last week against Miami, he was pretty good. But
He
there
was
were some
still good.
instances.
Yeah.
There were some instances, right, where he probably had to get rid of the ball sooner than he wanted to. And I know there's some fatigue factor there. But if you're the Baltimore Ravens, you kind of have to just try to force the Bills to go down and have like a 12 to 15 play drive, right? You have to take a page out of the Bills defensive playbook and essentially keep everything in front of you if you're the Ravens and force the Bills into long drives. I think that's the recipe for the Ravens. That's the recipe that the Bills use on defense against other teams. And I think that if the Ravens can get pressure on Josh without blitzing, which is obviously ideal for an opposing team against Josh, and they force the Bills to kind of matriculate it, as they say, down the field, that's their best chance. Now, the Bills have been very good at doing that this year. So I'm not saying that that's going to necessarily be successful in keeping the Bills out of the end zone, but that's your best chance, I think, if you're the Ravens.
Yeah, I don't know how many of you in the comment section or how many of you who are listening right now follow Brett Coleman on YouTube, but if you don't, head on over to his YouTube page and subscribe. He's really good. He's an NFL guy. Every week he picks a different topic and he breaks down the film, etc. He did a great piece on this week, and it had sort of a gimmicky headline like, "Did the Miami Dolphins figure out Josh Allen?" But if you go and you watch the 20-minute video, essentially he talks about how Josh Boyer, the defensive coordinator of the Miami Dolphins, was just a freaking madman last week with the way that he attacked Josh Allen. And essentially what he did was he just dropped guys back and he disguised and he got them into these cover 2 looks. And, he mixed in pressures, etc. And it really sort of threw Josh Allen off his game. Now Josh Allen has seen that. How did the Buffalo Bills maybe have a week to counter that? Something's different. But essentially what he laid out was the Miami Dolphins had to play the perfect game to slow down Josh Allen, who still accumulated like 500 yards of offense. We just couldn't figure it out in the red zone to score more points. They had to throw the kitchen sink at Josh Allen. They had to come up with a very creative game plan to sort of minimize Josh Allen to an extent. And that's a division rival and a defensive coordinator who probably spent a lot of his summer trying to figure that out. Not a team that's not a division rival who probably didn't spend as much of his summer thinking about Josh Allen and how to try to figure Josh Allen out. So I don't think the Baltimore Ravens are going to come in with as creative a game plan against Josh Allen as the Miami Dolphins did. But I also think you're not going to see them blitz a ton. You're probably going to see a lot of 2 deep shells, a lot of cover 2 looks from them. But I think it'll be a little bit more traditional and won't be hair on fire pass rushers the way in which the Miami Dolphins were able to do that. So kudos to the Miami Dolphins for having that game plan last week. I think it'll be very difficult for the Baltimore Ravens to replicate it. I expect Josh Allen to get back on track this week. And that leads us to special teams. The Bills obviously continue to roll out who they roll out on special teams. The Baltimore Ravens have a very good special teams unit. Justin Tucker, my punter 1 from last year's draft, who they took in the 4th freaking round because they had all those compensatory picks in the 4th round. Jordan Stout out of Penn State. And they got Devin Duvernay returning kicks and punts, and he is very good at what he does. Normally, I would say that Tyler Bass is better than or a wash against most kickers in this league. I'm not willing to say that this week as we go up against maybe the best kicker of all time in Justin Tucker. The dude is a legitimate threat. If he's lined up to kick a 65-yarder to win the game, I'm not feeling confident that the Buffalo Bills are going to win the football game. He's that good. Just talk a little bit about Justin Tucker and the threat he poses to the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah. I mean, it's not an exaggeration, I don't think, to say that he is in the short list of best kickers of all time. And he very well could be. I mean, he has the NFL record. We know that. But outside of that, I mean, just a model of consistency throughout his career. And Baltimore not being maybe the toughest place to kick, but it's not the easiest either, right? So you have to give him credit, cold games in the winters, etc. It is not a surprise at all that Baltimore has such a good special teams unit. I mean, their head coach, John Harbaugh, was a special teams coordinator before he got the head coaching job. So obviously special teams are hugely important to John Harbaugh. And they have a really good special teams unit. So the Bills, I agree with you. Typically, maybe they're in a situation where from a kicking standpoint, they're there or better. But it's probably an edge to the Ravens this week. We saw Bass miss a kick last week. So
It was tipped. It was tipped.
It was tipped. I mean, that's fair.
That when that happened, I was so like, what just happened?
Yeah.
So,
But Crowder has been a stabilizing
Mhm.
presence returning punts, so that's been nice. But yes, Justin
Mhm.
Tucker, what can you say? There's no one better
Yeah.
really at all right now in the NFL. So
All right. We are a half hour until kickoff. Bills at Ravens from M&T Bank Stadium. Weather's about 57 degrees with from what people are telling me is a light drizzling rain, not a torrential downpour or anything to be too concerned about. I think that was my biggest fear heading into the week. So let's get into it now. Our pregame superlatives. We're going to start with our take me higher player of the game, a player in the Buffalo Bills outside of Josh Allen that needs to really step up in order to take the Bills higher and over the top. Dave, I'm going to go to you after I play our little intro here, and then people in the comment section, give us your take me higher player of the game.
Can you take me higher to a place where blind men see?
I still can't get enough of that Bruce exclusive singing that for us. But Dave, who's your take me higher player of the game?
I'm going to go with someone who I haven't gone with yet this year, and going to be someone really important sort of in the entire landscape of slowing down Lamar Jackson today, and a guy who's played pretty well this year so far, and going to say Tremaine Edmonds has to be the take me higher player of the game today for the Bills. In the middle of that defense, he's going to be in some situations where he's going to be responsible for Mark Andrews, not in all, I know that, but also in kind of funneling Lamar Jackson into the gaps where he has to make a play. He's going to have to be a sure tackler today. He's going to have to be the one cleaning up if that defensive line can kind of create those gaps for Tremaine Edmonds to shoot in and make those tackles on Lamar Jackson in this Ravens running game. Obviously not having Ed and Jordan in there in the middle is going to be a tall task for the Bills in defending this running game. So to me, this is a Tremaine Edmonds game where he has to be the Tremaine Edmonds that people aren't shitting on after the game for, not good reason. So Tremaine Edmonds today, to me, has to step up and he has to take this defense higher and slowing down Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, that's a good one. Post Mafia comes in and says, Groot. I'm cheating a little bit here. I'm not picking one player. I'm picking 5 players, and that is the Buffalo Bills offensive line. They need to do a better job protecting Josh Allen. It doesn't need to be perfect, obviously, because Josh Allen is able to do so much with his legs, and he has just such good pocket awareness. They don't need to be elite by any regards, but they need to be better in pass protection, and they need to control the line of scrimmage. The Bills need to be able to convert in these short yardage situations. They need to have the threat of a running game. I don't necessarily think they have to run more, but have the threat of a running game. And I think the offensive line goes a long way to the Buffalo Bills better converting in the red zone and on the goal line. We have to score touchdowns this week. We cannot be dependent on field goals. So the offensive line is going to have a big week here for the Buffalo Bills, and Devin E coming in and saying Stephon Diggs is his take me higher player of the game. All right, so up next is the wild card player of the game here, the surprise player who could affect the outcome of this football game.
Why aren't the brakes working?
Because I cut the brakes! Wild card, bitches! Yeah!
All right, so comment section, hit us up. Who do you think is the wild card surprise player who could affect the outcome of this game? And while they are hitting us up in the comment section, we've already got Daniel McLeod coming in with Dawson Knox. Dave, who do you got?
I picked McKenzie last week, and I felt pretty good about that. He did contribute nicely. But I will say there was another player who flashed last week and getting some important reps, and that was James Cook. And I think James Cook.
We picked the same guy.
Oh, did we? Okay. I could go with Knox then. If
you're good. No, you're good.
I got to say James Cook. He impressed me last week. And I think, maybe some of these short passes are going to be high percentage plays. James Cook catching the ball and getting upfield and kind of making the most out of his touches. I was really impressed. The Ravens are going to throw Lamar out there, J.K. Dobbins, Justice Hill, these running backs. Like, Bills have a little bit of a weaponry back there now too, maybe if James Cook can impress. So give me James Cook as a deep cut wild card player for this game.
Yeah, normally I have a backup, and I had no backup this week because I did not think you would pick James Cook, but he looked uncomfortable to start the year. I think that garbage time versus Tennessee, you pointed that out, was really important for his progression and to get comfortable in this league. He looked good versus Miami, and here's the thing: the Bills, whenever he was on the field, like it seemed like the Bills were actively trying to get the ball in his hands.
Mhm.
I think today is the day he makes a game-changing play. He busts off a big play, either puts us in scoring position or scores. I think you're going to see James Cook make a game-changing type of play today, and you're going to see that game-changing speed and stuff be utilized. I don't know if it's going to be like a breakout game in terms of like he's going to have 15 carries for 115 yards or 10 catches for 80. Like, I don't think you're going to see anything like that, but I think he will make one big play to help this team. And apparently the Saints just double doinked from 61 yards and the Vikings win in London. So
Mm.
it might not have been a pretty game, but at least it was exciting until the end. Poor Andy Dalton. Poor Andy Dalton.
I
All
mean,
right.
Andy Dalton's made a lot of money in his career.
Yeah, I guess we
I
shouldn't
don't
say
feel
poor
too
Andy
bad for
Dalton.
him.
He's like 100 years old and he's still throwing the ball in the National Football League. All right. Up next is the Respect You player of the game, an opposing player the Bills need to respect in order to win.
I pure, straight hate you. But God damn it, do I respect you.
All right. So, who, Dave, is your opposing player the Bills need to respect? And let us know in the comment section. We already got BFLO Mafia news coming in with Mark Andrews. I think that might be your response too here.
Well, I was gonna say, like, we were getting to the point with the Bills where you almost like have to like not pick Josh Allen or Diggs as the take me
Mhm.
higher. I feel like for the respect you player of the game, you almost like have to not pick Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews because those are like the two obvious
Yeah.
answers. So those two are by far obvious answers. So
Mhm.
don't get me wrong. I definitely think that they need to respect Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson. But I am going to go with spin here and go with J.K. Dobbins. You know, you had mentioned he didn't look that impressive last week. He was on the injury report a little bit this week with the chest injury, but he has really come a long way. He's been practicing really in full for several weeks now. The Ravens kind of dipped their toes in the water with him last week, but when he gets in the open field, and he's a special running back, I think. And obviously, for those of you who watch this show, you know how I felt about J.K. Dobbins when we were about to draft AJ Epinesa. He was the very next pick right after AJ Epinesa. I really wanted J.K. Dobbins. I think he's a special running back, and I think that he can cause problems for the Bills and, you know, some of these read options. If like J.K. Dobbins is running the ball well and Lamar's reading these options well, that dual threat is going to be tough to stop. So I will say J.K. Dobbins now in his second game back is someone you got to keep your eye on.
Yeah, I wrote two guys down. I wrote Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. Like, and I guess I shouldn't have been so lazy, but I mean, to me, it's pretty simple. Lamar Jackson's 87. He's accumulated 87% of their offense. Like,
Yep.
he is their offense. If Lamar plays well, Baltimore wins or has a really good chance of winning the football game. If Lamar Jackson doesn't play well or just plays average, it's hard to imagine a world where the Buffalo Bills aren't good enough to beat that. And then Mark Andrews is the X factor. You mentioned it. He's got the same amount of catches as the next four guys, the next four receivers combined. There is really no run game outside of Lamar. Mark Andrews is that X factor weapon for him. But if I'm going to go outside of Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, I'm going Marcus Williams, the big free agent addition out of New Orleans. You know, teams, they like to run that two deep shell. Safeties are really important to minimizing or trying to slow down Josh Allen. And Marcus Williams is a really good one. And they paid him handsomely for a reason. Last week, my respect you player of the game was Javon Holland, and Javon Holland absolutely balled out. And then he balled out on Thursday Night Football too. Like, man, I love Javon Holland as a player. I hate that he's a Miami Dolphin. This week, I'm going with the safety again. I'm going to go with Marcus Williams. I think if I keep saying the Tennessee Titans, I don't know why. If the Baltimore Ravens are going to have success, it is going to be, again, it is going to be with Marcus Williams back there playing center field for them. All right, on to our fire sale. Hottest take that we have heading into this football game.
Oh my God! We're having a fire sale! Oh, the burning! It burns me! Evacuate all the school children! Oh, me! This isn't a fever! Sing, Greg! Can't even see where the knob is!
All right, while that was playing, we got some shots fired here from BFLO Mafia News saying AJ Swaganessa going to prove you wrong today, Tilt.
What did I say something bad?
I
about
don't
him?
know.
Did
I don't know. If BFL Mafia News says you did, you did. What is your hot take of the game? And then in the comment section, throw us your hottest take of this football game here.
Two guys coming back from injury this week in the secondary. Welcome back, Jordan Poyer, and welcome back, Dane Jackson. My hot take for this week is that Jordan Poyer and Dane Jackson each record an interception today against Lamar Jackson and coming back for this defense. I like Jordan maybe coming on a tip ball. Maybe Tremaine Edmonds as my take me higher gives him another little tip. Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
Oh, I think
that's fair.
The whole world except for you.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, that's fair. I mean, but like obviously, yes. Okay,
Yeah.
that's true. And Dane Jackson, first game back, he's going to probably be tasked with going up against Rashad Bateman today. I like his chances to maybe jump a slant route. They've been really loving those with Bateman and trying to give Bateman that yak those yak opportunities. So maybe Dane jumps a route today, gets a pick. So it's a hot take for a reason. Both Jordan Poyer and Dane Jackson coming back from injury both get an interception today.
Al Jarvis coming in says the starting defensive line each get a sack today. Carolina Frank says Groot 2 sacks. Pops Mafia says the Bills get 5 turnovers. Man, all of those things would be nice. Lamar Jackson is averaging 4 touchdowns a game through 3 games. My hot take today is that he accumulates less than 4 touchdowns on the day for the Baltimore Ravens as I block this porn bot that is now headed into our comment section here. So Lamar Jackson, my hot take is he has less than 4 touchdowns. The Bills defense, it bends, but it doesn't break. This will be a Justin Tucker game for the Baltimore Ravens. The Bills' goal is obviously going to be to not have a Tyler Bass game and be able to counter the Ravens' field goals with touchdowns. And I like this comment is Deshaun Watson watching.
Right when we were talking about all of these hot takes that we wanted to happen, they were all so nice that we got the porn bot in here.
All right, on to our final segment here. Our game predictions. Paint a picture for us. Our Back to the Future game predictions. And I lost there we go.
We're sending you back to the future.
Back to the future! Back to the future! Back to the future! Back to the future! Back to the future!
All right. Paint a picture for us, Dave, in the comment section. Give us your game predictions. And since we got some time, we got a couple of hot takes coming in. Josh Allen, 5 touchdowns. Rousseau with 3 sacks. They give all of Moss's runs to Cook. That would be a really good hot take there. We got some score predictions coming in. Stephen Burns says 35-27. And BFLO Mafia News says 35-28. Chris Kepner says 35-24. What is your game prediction? Paint a picture for us.
Yeah, I think this is a game. I kind of hinted at it at the onset of the show. Both quarterbacks are going to put their teams on their backs today. It's going to be Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, trading blows all day. I don't want to say it's going to be similar to that Chiefs game in the playoffs last year. It was like Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen back and forth. But I do think that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are going to do everything they can to put their teams on their backs today. I do think the rain maybe has a little bit of effect, but I think ultimately these teams both put up points today. I'm not saying it's going to be like both teams in the 40s, but I do think both teams will kind of be in that close to 30-point range today. I do think at the end of the day, the Bills defense gets enough horses back with Poyer being back, and their defensive line with Miller and Gregory Rousseau have that just enough of an edge with Ronnie Stanley out to push the Bills over the top in the end. So I'm going to say Bills 27, Ravens 24, a tight one throughout.
Yeah, my prediction is pretty similar. I have Bills 31, Ravens 27. I think that both offenses are going to still find a way to move the ball, even in the rain. I just think that the Bills will be better at converting red zone opportunities into touchdowns after last week's embarrassment. So I'm hoping the Bills defense bends, but doesn't break. And I think that the defense gets a stop on Lamar in the final minutes of the game as he tries to lead the Ravens down the field, down 4 win it, and we all are slowly dying of heart attacks as the Ravens are working their way down the field to try to score that game-winning touchdown, and make a bunch of other predictions coming in here as well. All right, we've got the predictions in, and people in the comment section. So this is sort of a topic we covered earlier. Hamlin starting, he's question mark. He's better than Johnson.
That's what it looks like now, based on the reports. That
Yeah, I was gonna
Hamlin
say,
is
has anyone had
Yeah.
a chance to maybe see what the beach reporters are saying? Who's
Yeah.
practicing with who?
Perino
It
said
appears.
Poyer and Hamlin are the two safety spots with the first team.
All right.
So
So
that's what it looks like.
I wonder if that's permanent, or I wonder if, again, last week they mentioned how it was mentioned by Renee Williams in the comment section how coach mentioned he didn't want to play Saran Neal because of the heat on defense. He wanted to save him for special teams. Could this be a situation where they don't want to play Jaquan Johnson at free safety in case Jordan Poyer gets hurt and they need him at strong safety? I don't know. So that is the question here. I think that maybe I think DeMar Hamlin is center fielder of the two. I think he fits the Micah Hyde responsibility for that better than the other two. So yeah, I kind of agree that I hope it's permanent, at least. Give Hamlin a shot. If Hamlin doesn't do well, then obviously Johnson's going to get his chance to go back in there. All right, Dave, any final thoughts before we head out of here and as kickoff approaches?
Yeah, just look, it's going to be hopefully a good game today. These are two really good teams. If the Bills do, for some reason, lose this game, depending on how the game goes, obviously the sky won't be falling. The aggravation of injuries a la Gabe Davis. So I hope it's a good game. This is a battle of two really good quarterbacks, the MVP frontrunners so far this year, Josh and Lamar. And, regardless of the outcome, hopefully the Bills play a good game and they do come out on top. So let's go Bills.
Yeah, let's go Bills. A couple of things before we head out. Number one, if you haven't already, if you appreciate what we're doing here at Cover One and just any of the shows, whether it's this show, whether it's Cover One Roundup or the fantasy stuff that we do, or what Aaron and Greg are doing, or what Anthony Prohaska or the Film Room guys are doing, or even what Mike and Kevin are doing as well. If you enjoy any of the Cover One content, all of the Cover One content, some of the Cover One content, highly encourage you to become a One Pass Club Access subscriber. You get a nice official shirt. Those shirts look good in the pictures that people were posting on social media. You get a nice little decal. You can put it on your tumbler or your coffee mug. You get exclusive member-only content, in-depth analysis, including scheme, play, and player breakdowns, scouting reports, analytics analysis, access on unlimited devices, access to the Cover One community, our Slack channel. It's awesome. We always have really good conversations on there and a bunch of behind-the-scenes content as well. $57 a year if you want to become a Cover One Pass subscriber. That's the number one way you can help us grow here at Cover One if you are interested in doing so. And hey, don't forget, when this show after the game, best post-game show in the business, Greg and Aaron will be breaking it down. We'll be breaking down everything for you in the Cover One post-game show, and we will be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. after the Cover One Roundup. All right, ladies and gentlemen, go. I highly encourage you to pour a beer, pour a drink of choice, maybe have a chance to order some chicken wings to get delivered for halftime, and go enjoy this football game between the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Ravens. You guys are awesome, or have been awesome. As always, we wouldn't be the show that we are without you guys in the comment section. And until next time, guys, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Are we having fun yet?